Every legend hides a truth. Every myth whispers a warning. Welcome to the Mythic Hour, where the forgotten gods and cursed stories return to life. Africa is home to gods and spirits you've never heard of, powerful beings who shape rivers, forests, deserts, and even the stars. Today, we uncover their forgotten stories. Deep in the heart of Africa, far beyond the bustling markets and sun-scorched savannas, there exists a world that few dare to tread, a realm of whispers, where the spirits of the ancients linger, invisible yet ever-present. Here, the wind carries secrets, and the rivers speak in tongues older than time. It is a place where the veil between the living and the supernatural thins, and those who wander too carelessly often find themselves not entirely alive, nor entirely gone. Kofi had always been drawn to stories of the unseen. As a child, he would sit by his grandmother's feet, eyes wide with wonder, as she recounted tales of spirits that ruled the unseen corners of the world. There were the great unknown gods, Ogun, the iron-wielding god of war and craft, Mami Wata, the seductive water spirit with hair like oil and eyes that could drown a soul, and Nommo, the enigmatic ancestral spirits of the Dogon, whose movements mirrored the stars themselves. But it was the lesser-known deities that fascinated Kofi the most, the obscure and forgotten, those whispered only in hushed tones around flickering fires. These were the spirits who did not seek fame or worship but thrived in the shadows, shaping destinies in ways mortals could scarcely comprehend. One humid evening, as the sky burned orange over the Niger Delta, Kofi ventured to the edge of a river said to be home to one such spirit. The elders called it Igbo's Veil, a stretch of water so dark and still that it seemed to swallow the moonlight. Legends said that Aya, a forest spirit, roamed the riverbanks at night. She was a protector of herbs, of cures, and of hidden knowledge, but those who approached with greed or malice would never return. Kofi knelt by the water's edge, his reflection shimmering like a ghost in the ripples. Aya, he whispered, I seek your guidance. Teach me what the elders cannot. The river remained silent for long moments, the air heavy with expectation. Then, from the shadows, a figure emerged, a woman draped in woven reeds and adorned with bright feathers. Her eyes glimmered with a strange, unsettling intelligence. You seek knowledge, she said, her voice like wind rustling through the trees. But knowledge comes with a price. Kofi nodded, feeling a mix of fear and anticipation. I am willing to pay. I stepped closer, and the surface of the water began to churn, forming visions, a boy transformed into a crocodile, a warrior blessed by Ogun's iron, a fisherman lost forever in the call of Mami Wata. Kofi saw lives altered, destinies intertwined with the will of spirits he had only heard of in whispers. These are but fragments, Aya said. The world is full of unseen forces. You must learn to see beyond the veil, to listen when others speak only in silence. Only then will you understand the true power of the obscure. And so, Kofi's journey began, not a quest for gold or glory, but a descent into the labyrinthine world of Africa's forgotten deities. From the forest of the Congo to the desert of Mali, he would encounter beings whose existence challenged the boundaries of reality. Some were benevolent, offering guidance or protection. Others were cruel, exacting punishments for transgressions the living could barely comprehend. By the time the moon rose fully over Igbo's Veil, Kofi felt the first stirrings of a power awakening within him, a sensitivity to the spirits, a resonance with forces unseen. He did not yet know whether this gift would save him or destroy him, but one thing was certain: his life, and the lives of those around him, would never be the same. The first whispers of the journey had begun, carried on the wind and water alike. The next morning, Kofi awoke with a sense of unease. The night by Igbo's Veil had left a lingering weight on his chest, as if the river itself had imprinted a secret onto his soul. He remembered Aya's words, "Knowledge comes with a price." He did not yet understand the cost, but he sensed it would be steep. Guided by instinct, Kofi followed the river inland, past thick forests and swamps where sunlight barely touched the earth. Here, the ordinary world seemed to blur. Birds sang in strange harmonies, insects moved in patterns that resembled cryptic runes, and the air was thick with a sweetness that was almost intoxicating. After hours of trekking, he arrived at a village perched along a bend in the river. Fishermen cast their nets into the water, singing chants that seemed to ripple with the spirit of the river itself. Children played barefoot along the shore, while elders watched from shaded porches, their eyes seeming to hold secrets that no outsider could penetrate. Kofi approached an old fisherman who seemed older than the trees around him. His skin was dark and weathered, and his eyes shone with an uncanny awareness. "Are you here for her?" the man asked without preamble. "For who?" Kofi replied. "The water spirit," the man said simply. "Mami Wata. She watches these rivers, these lakes, these seas. She chooses those who may see her, and you have been chosen." Kofi's heart pounded. Mami Wata was a legend known across many African cultures, a siren-like entity with hair like flowing oil, eyes as deep as the ocean, and a power over both wealth and destruction. But legends were always easier to believe at a distance. Now, standing at the river's edge, Kofi felt the stories pulse in the air around him. The fisherman handed him a small, carved figurine of a woman rising from the waves. "Offer her this," he said. "But remember, she rewards only those with pure intent." That evening, as twilight settled and the river mirrored the fading light of the sun, Kofi cast the figurine into the water. The ripples seemed to stretch endlessly, and then the surface broke. From the depths rose a figure that seemed both human and divine. Her long hair shimmered like oil slicks in the sunlight, and her eyes glowed with an otherworldly intensity. Kofi felt his breath catch. He was aware that he was no longer alone in the mortal realm. "Why have you come?" her voice rippled like the waves themselves. "I seek knowledge," Kofi said. "Knowledge of the spirits, of the unseen forces that shape our world." Mami Wata's gaze pierced him, assessing the very truth of his words. "Knowledge is a double-edged gift," she murmured. "Some truths will lift you, others will drown you. Are you ready to pay their cost?" Kofi nodded, though a tremor ran through his limbs. "I am." The water swirled, drawing him in, and suddenly he was no longer on the riverbank but beneath the waves, surrounded by glowing forms and creatures unlike anything he had imagined. Fish with human-like faces drifted past, and glowing orbs hovered like stars. Mami Wata guided him to a sunken temple, carved from coral and stone, filled with inscriptions that pulsed with ancient magic. "This temple holds the stories of those forgotten by history," she said. "The obscure spirits, the gods hidden from human memory. If you are to understand them, you must see their words as they are, not as they are told." She revealed to him visions of Nommo, the ancestral spirits of the Dogon people, who existed as amphibious beings and whose movements mirrored celestial patterns. They were both creators and destroyers, keepers of cosmic balance. Kofi saw Nommo weaving destinies with threads of starlight, intertwining the fates of villages, rivers, and forests. Then Mami Wata spoke of Ogun, the god of iron and craft. In the vision, Ogun forged tools and weapons, but his true power was not in war, it was in the act of creation, the spark of ingenuity that could change the world. Kofi saw how Ogun influenced human hands, guiding mortals to build, invent, and survive. But the visions did not end there. Lesser-known entities began to appear, shadows of the obscure. Ekwensu, a trickster spirit from Igbo mythology, who sowed chaos not out of malice but as a test of cleverness and courage. Mama Wata, a Zulu goddess of rain and fertility, who danced across golden fields and taught mortals to honor the balance of life and growth. Legba, the West African spirit of crossroads, who opened pathways but demanded insight and understanding before granting passage. Each vision left Kofi breathless. Every spirit was not a mere story but a living, breathing force, shaping the world in ways that were invisible to ordinary eyes. When he emerged from the water, gasping and trembling, Mami Wata's form had vanished. But the river seemed to hum with her presence, a low, eternal murmur that resonated with Kofi's soul. He now understood that the journey ahead was not just about learning, it was about surviving encounters with forces that were older than nations, older than language itself. As night fell, Kofi felt the first true weight of his path. The obscure spirits were calling him, each in their own way, and he was beginning to realize that knowledge was never free. With every secret he uncovered, he was entwined more deeply with powers that could elevate or annihilate him. Yet, despite the fear, Kofi knew he could not turn back. There was a reason the spirits had chosen him, though he did not yet know why. The river whispered his name once more. And in that whisper, Kofi heard a promise and a warning. The following morning, Kofi left the river behind, his heart still thrumming from the visions Mami Wata had shown him. Though the village lay quiet under the dawn sun, he felt the lingering weight of unseen eyes, as though the spirits he had glimpsed were now following him. The river's whispers echoed in his mind, guiding him toward the next chapter of his journey. He traveled westward into a dense forest that locals called the Whispering Woods, a place avoided by hunters and travelers alike. Legends said the woods were alive, not just with animals, but with spirits that watched from every shadow, moving in patterns that defied human logic. As Kofi entered the forest, he noticed subtle changes in the air. The smell of damp earth was heavier, tinged with a faint sweetness like decaying flowers. Every sound, the rustle of leaves, the crack of a twig, felt amplified, as if the forest itself was listening. He remembered Aya's warning, the unseen test those who tread carelessly. Respect is your shield. Hours passed, and Kofi came upon a clearing where sunlight barely pierced the thick canopy. In the center stood a tree unlike any he had seen before, its bark was dark as obsidian, and strange, luminescent fungi clung to its roots. From the shadows, a figure emerged, Oya, a Yoruba deity of wind, storms, and transformation. Her hair swirled like a cyclone, and her eyes sparkled with the intensity of lightning. You seek what mortals rarely do, Oya said, her voice like the rush of a storm. You seek the forgotten, the obscure. Yet you carry fear with you. Fear weakens the spirit, and the forest preys on weakness. Kofi bowed, his palms pressed together in respect. I seek understanding. I wish to see the spirits as they truly are. Oya's smile was both beautiful and terrifying. She raised her hands, and the winds around the clearing began to dance, twisting the leaves and vines into intricate patterns. To know the obscure, you must first confront yourself, she said. Every spirit you encounter will mirror a part of you, your desires, your doubts, your courage. Fail this test, and the forest will not let you live. Before Kofi could respond, the shadows around the clearing shifted. Figures emerged, obscure spirits whose names were whispered in only the oldest tales. Nkisi, the Congolese spirit of protection and justice, who appeared as a towering figure covered in charms and relics. His eyes burned like coals, judging the hearts of mortals. Enonsi, the trickster spider of Ghana, whose stories had traveled across oceans. He spun webs of fate that ensnared the careless and rewarded the clever. Mbombo, the shadowy creator from Bakongo myth, who had formed the world from a cosmic void, leaving traces of power hidden in the forest. Kofi realized that the spirits were not merely testing him, they were watching his reaction, reading the intentions he could barely admit even to himself. He felt fear not at his resolve, but he remembered the river, the visions of Mami Wata, and the pulse of the Nommo in the stars. Drawing a deep breath, he stepped forward. I come with respect. I seek only understanding, and I wish no harm. The spirit studied him silently. Then Kisi nodded, and the forest seemed to exhale. Oya raised her arms, and the wind formed a spiral that carried Kofi upward, lifting him slightly above the ground. In this whirlwind, visions of the obscure spirits' histories unfolded. Nkisi had intervened in human conflicts, shaping destinies quietly and invisibly, leaving behind symbols that only the attentive could decipher. Enonsi's webs revealed both trickery and wisdom, teaching that cunning and creativity could outwit even the most formidable forces. Mombo's creation stories showed the delicate balance between chaos and order, emphasizing that even obscure forces had purpose and design. The whirlwind deposited Kofi gently back on the forest floor. Oya's eyes glimmered with approval. You have faced the shadows within yourself and walked among the obscure. Remember this, knowledge without humility is dangerous. The spirits grant insight, but they demand responsibility. As he continued deeper into the forest, Kofi encountered even more entities, spirits tied to forgotten rituals, abandoned shrines, and hidden waterways. Among them, Legba's lesser siblings, minor crossroads spirits who opened doors to hidden paths, each offering riddles that tested perception and morality. Ajemo, the masquerade spirit of the Yoruba, whose dance could bring blessings or misfortune depending on the heart of the observer. Sasebonsam, a forest vampire-like creature from Ghana, whose presence reminded mortals of the delicate line between respect and fear in dealing with the unknown. Each encounter left Kofi changed. He learned that the obscure spirits were not merely powerful, they were mirrors, reflecting human desires, fears, and hidden truths. The deeper he journeyed, the more he understood that these deities and spirits shaped the world in ways mortals often mistook for chance or fate. Night fell over the whispering woods, and Kofi found a safe clearing to rest. Around him, the spirits' whispers filled the air, telling stories older than any written history, tales of creation, survival, and the delicate balance between the mortal and divine. Kofi lay on the forest floor, the luminescent fungi casting faint light across the clearing. He realized that he was no longer merely an observer. He had become part of the world of the obscure, a bridge between the living and the spirits who walked unseen among them. Tomorrow, he would leave the forest and journey toward the desert of Moli, where the sounds held secrets of ancient spirits whose existence had been nearly erased by time. But tonight, Kofi allowed himself a rare moment of peace, listening to the whispers of the forest and feeling the pulse of the unseen world beneath his feet. The journey was far from over. The obscure spirits had only begun to reveal themselves, and Kofi sensed that the true test, the confrontation with the deepest mysteries of Africa's forgotten deities, was still ahead. The whispering woods faded behind him, replaced by the vast, golden expanse of the Sahara. The sun scorched the earth mercilessly, and the wind carried fine, burning sand that stung Kofi's eyes. Yet, he pressed on, guided by the faint whispers of the spirits he had already encountered. The desert seemed empty at first, an endless void of sand dunes and distant mirages. But Kofi had learned that the unseen world thrived where mortals feared to tread. Spirits of the desert moved invisibly, shaping the shifting dunes, carrying the secrets of lost civilizations, and waiting for those bold enough to seek them. As he trudged through the heat, he came upon an oasis so still and quiet that it seemed untouched by time. At its center was a lone palm tree, its shadow stretching across the sand like a bridge between worlds. And beneath its shade, a figure sat in meditation. The figure rose as Kofi approached, revealing the glowing, ethereal presence of Nommo, the Dogon ancestral spirits. Their bodies shimmered like water, though no water was nearby, and their eyes reflected constellations unknown to human astronomers. You have walked among the forest spirits, Nommo said, their voices a harmonious chorus. You have faced shadows of your own heart. Now you must confront the deserts, where the forgotten gods dwell. Few mortals survive the trials of this land, and fewer still emerge with understanding. Kofi bowed. I am ready, he said, though a knot of fear twisted in his stomach. Nommo extended a hand, and the sands beneath Kofi's feet shifted. Suddenly, he was transported across time and space, witnessing civilizations long buried beneath the dunes, kingdoms whose kings worshipped spirits unknown to modern historians, priests who communed with beings older than the stars, and rituals that bound humans to forces that shaped fate itself. Among these visions, Kofi met several obscure desert deities. Ala, the Igbo earth goddess, whose presence in the desert seemed paradoxical yet undeniable. She represented fertility, morality, and the hidden life that persisted even in barren lands. Kofi saw how she guided travelers and punished those who defiled the land. Nommo's kin, lesser water spirits adapted to the desert, who appeared as shimmering mirages, offering guidance to those who honored the delicate balance between life and survival. Hidon, a spirit whispered about in Mali's remote tribes, who guarded the secrets of lost oases and ancient knowledge, revealing truth only to the worthy. These encounters taught Kofi that the obscure spirits were everywhere, not confined to rivers, forests, or mountains. They existed wherever the human heart intersected with the divine. The desert, though harsh and unforgiving, was alive with unseen forces that shaped reality in ways mortals could barely perceive. One evening, as the sun sank beneath the dunes, painting the sky in shades of crimson and gold, Kofi heard the faint sound of drums. Following the rhythm, he came upon a circle of spectral dancers, led by Mami Wata, the Zulu goddess of rain and fertility, who had traveled far from her usual lands to this desert sanctuary. Her dance conjured visions of rain and green fields in the midst of the arid sands, a reminder that life persisted even in the harshest conditions. She spoke to Kofi. Obscure gods are not forgotten because they are weak. They are forgotten because humans stopped listening. They thrive where belief has waned but their power remains. Remember, knowledge is not enough, you must honor, respect, and sometimes, sacrifice. That night, Kofi slept under the stars, feeling the presence of countless spirits surrounding him. The desert, though silent to the untrained ear, was alive with whispers of ancient wisdom and forgotten lore. When he awoke, he realized that his journey had only deepened. The spirits of the forest had tested his courage, the river had tested his humility, and now the desert tested his endurance and insight. Each step forward was both a gift and a challenge, preparing him for encounters with deities whose names had been erased from history books, yet whose power still rippled through the world. As Kofi moved onward, he began to understand the true pattern. The obscure spirits were not merely entities to be observed, they were threads in the tapestry of existence. By interacting with them, learning from them, and respecting them, he was weaving his own path through a reality layered with magic, morality, and mystery. The horizon stretched endlessly, and Kofi sensed that beyond the next dune awaited spirits whose influence touched kings, warriors, and entire civilizations. He was no longer just a seeker, he was becoming a vessel, a bridge between the mortal world and the unseen, carrying the whispers of Africa's forgotten gods into the light. The desert wind carried a warning, soft but insistent: some knowledge will demand more than you are willing to give. Some truth will change you forever. Yet, Kofi pressed on. He had walked too far to turn back. The desert night was profound. Kofi lay beneath a sky so vast and bright that it seemed to stretch into eternity. Millions of stars glittered like scattered diamonds, and he sensed a presence in their silent light, a pulse, a rhythm that spoke not in words but in resonance. It was Nommo who appeared first, shimmering with a fluid light that mirrored the constellations above. You have walked rivers, forests, and deserts, the spirits intoned. Now you must learn the patterns of the cosmos. The obscure gods are not confined to earth, they move among the stars, shaping time, fate, and the unseen currents of life. Kofi rose, feeling both awe and trepidation. How can mortal eyes see such things? He asked. Nommo's form rippled. Mortal eyes alone cannot. But the spirit that seeks, that listens, that respects, can perceive what is hidden. Then the stars themselves began to shift. Constellations he had never seen before moved across the sky, forming shapes of beings, spirits older than human memory. Among them appeared Niam, the Akan sky god, who held the cosmos in balance, commanding the sun, moon, and stars, yet often unseen by mortals. Nommo ancestors, weaving paths across constellations, guiding the tides of rivers, the fertility of the land, and the fates of kings and commoners alike. Sangoma stars, minor celestial spirits from southern African lore, reflecting ancestral guidance and mystical insight. Kofi felt the energy of the universe converge upon him. The stars whispered the interconnectedness of all things, river and forest, sand and storm, human and spirit. Each obscure deity he had encountered now revealed itself as a node in a vast, living network of existence. Suddenly, the sky darkened. A shadow moved across the constellations, chilling Kofi with its presence. From the cosmic void emerged Ekwensu, the Igbo trickster spirit, in a form more terrifying than any earthly manifestation. His eyes burned with mischief and insight, and his laughter echoed across the desert. "You seek truth, mortal," Ekwensu said, "but truth is not always what you desire. You may find it beautiful, or it may unmake you." Kofi felt fear prickling his spine. "What do you want from me?" he asked, his voice steady despite the dread. "Only to test you," Ekwensu replied. "A trial of insight. Answer wrongly, and the cosmos will not forgive ignorance." In that instant, the stars themselves formed a riddle, a swirling pattern of light, constellations, and reflections of Kofi's own fears and desires. He realized the riddle was not just a puzzle, it was a reflection of his heart. Only by confronting his deepest doubts, his hidden motivations, and his willingness to bear the burdens of knowledge could he survive. Kofi closed his eyes and reached inward. Memories of the river, the forest, and the desert, the whispers of Aya, the guidance of Mami Wata, the lessons of Oya and Nkisi flooded him. He understood then that every spirit, every obscure deity, was testing not just him, but the human capacity to perceive and honor the unseen. When he opened his eyes, the shadow had receded. The constellations shifted back into harmony, the stars glowing brighter than before. Ekwensu's laughter lingered, softer now, almost approving. Nommo's voice resonated across the desert night. "You have passed the trial of the cosmos, mortal. The obscure spirits reveal themselves only to those who can bear their truths. You are now part of the network, a vessel for the forgotten, the unseen, the ignored." Kofi fell to his knees, overwhelmed by the enormity of the experience. The desert, the forest, the river, all the lands he had traversed, now felt alive with currents of energy he could sense but not fully name. Before him appeared visions of other obscure African deities he had yet to meet. Ajemo, whose masquerade dances not only blessed harvest but also taught the sacredness of life cycles. Sasebonsam, the guardian of forest secrets, reminding mortals of the consequences of disrespect. Legba's silent siblings, whose pathways through fate were labyrinthine and invisible, yet vital for understanding the choices of existence. The cosmic night revealed a truth that Kofi could never have comprehended alone. The obscure deities were not anomalies, they were the backbone of the universe. They shaped morality, luck, life, and death, all while remaining unseen to ordinary eyes. As dawn approached, the stars faded but left their imprint on Kofi's soul. He felt changed, awakened to layers of reality invisible to the casual observer. The desert wind carried a whisper that was almost a song. The path continues. The obscure are many. And they watch, patiently, eternally. Kofi rose, now carrying the weight and wonder of the universe. His journey would take him next to sacred ruins and hidden shrines, where the obscure spirits of the past lingered, guardians of knowledge long erased from memory. He knew the trials would grow more difficult, and the choices more consequential. Yet, with the lessons of river, forest, desert, and sky etched into his being, he felt prepared. The unseen world was no longer an abstraction, it was a living, breathing reality, and he had become part of its story. The horizon blushed with the first rays of sunlight. Kofi set his gaze toward the distant sounds, the forest beyond, and the mystery still hidden among Africa's forgotten gods. His journey was far from over, but he now understood its purpose: to see, to learn, and to honor the obscure. The desert gave way to rocky hills, and in their shadows, Kofi discovered the remnants of an ancient city, half buried beneath centuries of sand. The crumbling walls were etched with symbols that spoke of gods long erased from memory, and the air itself seemed thick with the presence of spirits waiting to be remembered. Kofi walked carefully, aware that he was stepping into a space both sacred and perilous. Every stone seemed to hum with energy, every shadow held a secret, and every whisper of wind carried fragments of chants from civilizations long gone. He realized that these ruins were not abandoned, they were watched, protected, and shaped by obscure spirits whose power endured even as their worshippers vanished. In the center of the ruins, he found a circular stone altar, blackened by fire and time. Here, the spirits gathered most strongly. From the shadows emerged a figure unlike any he had seen, Mombo, the cosmic creator of the Bakongo, who had molded the earth and sky from chaos itself. His presence was immense, and his voice resonated like thunder in the mountains. "You have walked rivers, forests, deserts, and the stars," Mombo said. "Yet understanding the obscure requires more than seeing, it requires participation. Knowledge without action is meaningless. Are you ready to act?" Kofi bowed deeply. "I am." Mombo gestured to the altar, and suddenly the ruins transformed. Spirits appeared in the form of humans, animals, and hybrid beings, performing rituals Kofi had never witnessed. Their dances and chants were more than ceremonies, they were a living language, a means of communicating with the cosmos itself. Among the spirits, he recognized several obscure deities. Ajemo, whose masquerade dances now took shape in spectral masks, teaching lessons about community, justice, and moral responsibility. Ekwensu, lurking at the edges, testing those who dared to interfere with sacred rites, his laughter echoing as a warning and a challenge. Sasebonsam, whose shadowy form moved silently among the ruins, a reminder of the consequences of disrespect or greed. Kofi understood that the spirits were not merely performing rituals for themselves, they were maintaining the balance between mortal and divine, ensuring that knowledge and power were not misused. Mombo approached him, placing a hand on his shoulder. "You have been chosen to witness, but now you must contribute. Each obscure spirit has a story, a lesson, a fragment of power. Only by honoring them, by participating in their work, can you truly learn." Kofi stepped forward to the altar, feeling the pulse of the spirits beneath his fingertips. He performed the rituals as instructed, chanting, moving, offering respect with every gesture. As he did, visions unfolded before him, entire civilizations rising and falling, rivers changing course, forests and deserts shaped by unseen hands, all guided by obscure deities whose influence was profound yet hidden. As night fell over the ruins, Kofi realized that the spirits were testing not just his knowledge but his character. They sought humility, courage, and insight, and only those who could balance these qualities could hope to survive encounters with the most dangerous obscure entities. The night deepened, and from the ruins emerged a new presence, Nommo's ancient kin, now appearing as both water and star, bridging Kofi's experiences from river, forest, desert, and sky. Their message was clear: the obscure gods were connected, a vast network of power that transcended geography, time, and human understanding. Kofi felt the weight of this revelation. He was no longer just a seeker of stories, he was a participant in the ongoing narrative of the obscure, a bridge between worlds, a witness to powers that shaped life itself. Before he slept, Mombo whispered to him, "The journey continues. The unseen world is vast. The obscure are many. And each will demand something of you. Be vigilant, for not all spirits are forgiving, and some knowledge may demand more than you are willing to give." Kofi lay among the ruins, listening to the whispers of the spirits, feeling the pulse of the obscure in every stone and shadow. The path ahead would take him further into forgotten lands, where deities of storms, shadows, and cosmic balance awaited. The journey was far from over. Each step brought him closer to understanding the intricate web of African mythology, its obscure deities, spirits, and forces that continue to shape the world unseen. The ruins faded behind him as Kofi ventured into a valley veiled by perpetual mist. The air was thick, cool, and damp, carrying the faint scent of herbs and smoke. This place was unlike the desert, the forest, or the riverbanks he had traveled. It felt suspended between time and reality, a crossroads for spirits whose intentions were impossible to read. Here, the obscure spirits revealed themselves in their most ambiguous forms. Some were benevolent, offering guidance. Others were cruel, demanding sacrifices of courage, humility, or morality. Among them, Kofi encountered Ekwensu, the trickster, now more sinister than ever. He presented illusions of power and temptation, testing Kofi's ability to resist shortcuts that could harm others. Sasebonsam, lurking in the trees like a shadow among shadows, his long limbs and piercing eyes warning Kofi of the dangers of greed and impatience. Ajemo, whose masquerade dances became a series of riddles that questioned not just intellect but the heart, forcing Kofi to consider justice, loyalty, and humility in ways he had never before imagined. Kofi realized that each spirit was not only a guide but also a mirror, reflecting his fears, ambitions, and flaws. The valley's mist seemed to shift according to his emotions. When fear rose, it thickened. When clarity arrived, the path opened. The first test came with Ekwensu. In a swirling vision, Kofi saw a village ravaged by famine, its people desperate. A shimmering object appeared, an artifact of immense power, promised to restore prosperity at the cost of an unknown consequence. The trickster's laughter echoed. "Take it, and you save them. But at what cost, mortal? Choose wisely." Kofi hesitated, recalling Nommo's lessons. Every action had ripples across time and space, and the obscure spirits watched those ripples carefully. He recognized the temptation, felt the weight of responsibility pressing on him, and chose not to seize the artifact. In doing so, the vision shattered, leaving him standing alone in the mist, but a quiet voice whispered, "You have chosen wisely." The obscure watch and remember. Integrity is a form of power few possess. Next, Sasebonsam tested him physically and spiritually. Shadows reached for Kofi, tugging at his limbs, trying to pull him into the darkness. But Kofi focused, remembering the ritual dances of Ajemo, the patience taught by Nommo, and the humility learned from Aya. He resisted, navigating the twisting paths of the valley without yielding to fear. Finally, Ajemo's challenge came. A circle of masked spirits surrounded him, each mask representing a different moral dilemma: selfishness, pride, vengeance, ignorance. Kofi was asked to step forward into each scenario, making choices that could alter the fates of unseen lives. With every decision, he felt the presence of the obscure deities guiding him, nudging him toward insight and reflection. By dawn, Kofi emerged from the valley transformed. He had passed the test, but he had also realized the cost of seeing what others could not. The obscure spirits demanded more than curiosity; they required wisdom, restraint, and moral courage. Mortals who failed the test were lost forever, either consumed by darkness or trapped in illusions they could never escape. Yet, the valley had also revealed a secret gift. Kofi could now sense the subtle currents of the unseen world. He could perceive the faint stirrings of deities across lands, follow the invisible threads that connected spirits to mortals, and anticipate the intentions of entities he could neither see nor touch. As he climbed the final ridge of the valley, the mist parted, revealing a distant city on the horizon. It was an ancient place, said to be built by a civilization that revered obscure gods long forgotten by history. Kofi knew that here, he would encounter the final leg of his journey, the spirits whose powers touched kings, warriors, and empires, forces capable of reshaping the world itself. Before setting out, he paused and reflected. Every river, forest, desert, star, and valley had taught him something profound. The obscure spirits of Africa were not mere myths, they were living, breathing forces that demanded respect, humility, and courage. Knowledge alone was not enough, understanding required experience, empathy, and moral strength. The horizon glimmered in the rising sun, and Kofi took a deep breath. The path ahead would be more dangerous than anything he had faced, yet he felt ready. The unseen world had begun to reveal its secrets to him, and he would carry these truths forward, a bridge between mortal and divine, witness and participant, seeker and vessel of the obscure. As Kofi approached the distant city, the air shifted. The wind no longer carried ordinary sound or scents, it hummed with a presence both ancient and immense. The city rose from the desert like a mirage solidified into reality, its walls carved with intricate symbols, towers crowned with statues of beings long erased from human memory. Every step into the city felt like entering another plane of existence. Kofi could sense the pulse of countless spirits, some benevolent, some merciless. He realized that this was the domain of the most obscure deities, the ones whose influence had once touched entire civilizations and whose legacies had been buried beneath centuries of neglect. At the city gates, a figure emerged from the shadows, Ogun, the god of iron, craft, and war. His presence was commanding, yet not intimidating. He radiated authority and wisdom. "You have traveled far, mortal," Ogun said, his voice like tempered steel. "You have seen rivers, forests, deserts, and stars. You have passed the trials of moral courage. Yet the city tests more than knowledge or virtue, it tests the soul itself." Kofi nodded. "I am ready." Ogun motioned to the streets, and as Kofi walked through the city, he witnessed visions of obscure deities at work. Mami Wata, appearing not only by rivers but now guiding trade, wealth, and diplomacy across empires, her influence subtle but profound. Nommo, shaping cosmic cycles while guiding mortals to build civilizations, the amphibious forms mirrored in canals and wells of ancient cities. Legba, whose paths crossed with kings and merchants alike, silently determining which doors would open and which would remain forever closed. The city itself seemed alive, responding to Kofi's presence. Buildings shifted subtly, revealing hidden chambers where spirits communicated through murals, statues, and relics imbued with ancient energy. Here, the obscure gods demanded more than observation, they required understanding and reverence. As Kofi wandered, he encountered a council of spirits, the most obscure, the most powerful, and the least remembered. Among them were Ekwensu, now transformed into a figure of paradox, both trickster and teacher, revealing the thin line between chaos and wisdom. Moba Mona Wesa, radiating fertility and life, guiding mortals and spirits alike toward harmony and balance. Sasebonsam, a reminder that even unseen forces had limits, and that disrespect toward the obscure carried consequences. The council spoke to him in unison. "You have walked the paths few mortals ever see," they intoned. "You have respected, endured, and learned. But now, Kofi, you must make a choice. The knowledge of the obscure is vast, and its power immense. Will you carry it into the mortal world, sharing its wisdom and danger, or will you return, leaving the secrets buried, preserved from human greed?" Kofi hesitated. The weight of responsibility pressed upon him. To share this knowledge could elevate humanity or plunge it into unforeseen peril. To leave it buried would honor the spirits but deny the lessons of his journey. He thought of the rivers, forests, deserts, valleys, and stars. He thought of the obscure spirits who had tested him, guided him, and reflected his own soul. Finally, he spoke. "I will share the knowledge, but with humility and caution. I will honor the obscure, remembering their lessons, and I will ensure their power is respected." The council nodded, and the city seemed to shimmer in approval. Ogun placed a hand on Kofi's shoulder. "Then you are ready," he said. "Carry their stories, honor their existence, and walk among the living as a bridge between worlds." As the sun rose over the city of forgotten gods, Kofi felt a transformation. He was no longer just a seeker, he was a witness, a participant, and a guardian of knowledge long obscured. The obscure deities had revealed themselves, testing his courage, wisdom, and heart, and he had emerged changed, carrying the weight of both mortal and divine responsibilities. Yet, Kofi knew that the journey was not truly over. Beyond this city, beyond this test, the world held countless other spirits, forgotten gods, and hidden forces. His path now extended beyond the boundaries of what he had known, an endless journey of learning, honoring, and guarding the obscure. And as he stepped from the city into the first light of day, Kofi realized a profound truth: the unseen world was vast, eternal, and alive, and he had become one of its few messengers. Kofi awoke not in the city of forgotten gods, but on the edge of a familiar riverbank. The water rippled gently in the morning light, the same river where I had first appeared. He felt the weight of the journey pressing on him, but also a quiet clarity. The river whispered in recognition, carrying fragments of lessons learned in forests, deserts, valleys, and the cosmic night sky. The spirits were still with him, though now invisible. He could feel Mami Wata's subtle guidance in the flow of the river, Ogun's tempered strength in the tools and crafts of those nearby, and Nommo's cosmic patterns in the rhythm of life around him. Even the trickster Ekwenso lingered, reminding him that vigilance and humility must always accompany knowledge. Kofi realized the true meaning of his journey: the obscure deities were not distant, mythic entities, they were present, shaping lives, influencing choices, and maintaining the balance between human ambition and cosmic order. He had become their messenger, carrying stories and wisdom that had been nearly lost to time. Returning to the nearby village, Kofi began to share the lessons he had learned, not merely as stories, but as guidance. He spoke of the rivers that held knowledge, the forests that tested courage, the deserts that demanded endurance, and the stars that mirrored human destiny. He taught that the obscure spirits were everywhere, unseen yet potent, and that respect, humility, and moral courage were essential to interacting with them. Some villagers listened with awe, others with skepticism. But even those who doubted could not deny the subtle changes. Crops thrived where he suggested planting in harmony with the land, conflicts resolved when he reminded disputing parties of the balance between justice and compassion, and the river seemed to respond to rituals performed with respect, offering abundance to those who honored it. Kofi also understood that his journey was ongoing. The obscure deities had tested him, but their wisdom was infinite, and the world still held corners unexplored, spirits unrecognized, and secrets yet to reveal themselves. Every river, forest, desert, and star held new lessons, and every person he encountered was connected to these forces in ways both visible and invisible. At night, he would sit by the river, gazing at the stars and feeling the pulse of the unseen world. The whispers of Aya, Mami Wata, Ogun, Nommo, and the countless obscure spirits echoed in his mind, reminding him that knowledge carried responsibility, and that the line between mortal and divine was thinner than most could perceive. Kofi understood that he had been chosen not for glory, but for stewardship. He had walked with the obscure, faced moral and spiritual trials, and emerged capable of carrying their stories into the world of mortals. His journey had shown him the depth and complexity of African mythology, beyond the familiar gods and spirits, an intricate web of forces that shaped lives, destinies, and the natural world itself. And so, Kofi became a bridge between worlds. The whispers of the obscure gods traveled with him, guiding his actions, his choices, and his teachings. He shared the wisdom of the unseen, honoring the obscure, and reminding those who would listen that the world is far richer, stranger, and more mysterious than human eyes alone could ever perceive. The river still whispered, the forest still hummed, the desert still tested, and the stars still shone with ancient knowledge. Kofi walked among them all, carrying their lessons forward, a messenger of the obscure, a living testament to Africa's hidden myths, its forgotten deities, and the eternal power of the unseen. If you find these mythic stories interesting and educative, subscribe for more myths that were never meant to be forgotten.